Hello, good evening. Wow, it's really big. I've been sitting down the front. Didn't quite anticipate. So yeah, my name's Rob Morrison. I'm the director of TAKTAL. We produce creative projects to connect people with spaces. A couple of those projects I'll go through quickly when the slide comes up. We actually do Pecha Kucha in Glasgow as well, so it's always surprising to see how long slides take. So one is called the Whisky Bond. We're responsible for connecting. It's a 7-story development for a kind of cultural hub. We're responsible for connecting that with a creative community. And the other one is we've been developing a arts venue called the Glue Factory. Both of these are in a regeneration master plan in the north of Glasgow. The project I'd like to speak about this evening is called Agile City, which is a research project that aims to gain a deeper understanding of how cultural and community projects can be more responsive to their communities. And this evening I'd like to talk about the idea of how we could potentially pilot ideas within city environments. To do so, I'd like to draw a comparison between startup businesses and new urban projects in the sense that how they both aim to address perceived problems and they both carry out research and base a solution on a hypothesis, and there is significant uncertainty about how they will respond with the public. So to get an understanding of, has anyone in the room started a business and written a business plan? You raise your hands, please. So how many of you have written that business plan and potentially aren't that business plan hasn't delivered exactly how you might have said? I think that's probably the case of anyone who started a business. So I think it's an interesting idea that why we, when developing city projects, might invest considerable amounts of money in something where the outcomes are so often uncertain. And that's what I would like to look at this evening, and I'd like to present 2 case studies to try and help to understand that. So at the beginning of Agile City, we started to try and think about other industries that have started to look at business planning from a very iterative and sort of process-led development. So, and examples of these would be agile manufacturing, lean startup, and design thinking. And this is a basic model through which they look at. So it's problem, research, understanding, ideas, making and piloting, which is the key to it, engagement, interaction, feedback. But feedback is the fundamental aspect of this. So it's understanding the feedback from the community through which you are wanting to interact with. So to kind of give an example of this, I'd like to sort of share with you two projects of varying scale. The first is a project delivered by Assemble in the east end of Glasgow, which is Baltic Street Adventure Playground. The project was delivered in Dalmarnock, which is an area of significant social deprivation. This is a London-based practice, and so rather than designing a solution to a playground and social issues, they designed a process, and the first part of that process is create an open site and introduce really cheap, simple materials and actually try to understand how people within the community would engage with that space. Rather than designing a solution, they designed a process. And this allowed them to sort of understand how actually the people would work instead of them having a guaranteed solution to what they thought the problem was. So to look at that diagram, the problem was social lack of activity. They researched around that idea. The concept they delivered was an adventure playground. They piloted the idea, they engaged with the local community, they got feedback, and that allowed them to design a response that was an iterative process. So it's like, Pecha Kucha is really fast, I'm like forgetting to breathe slightly. Right, so green light for Midtown, cool. So we're in New York now. This is a massive scale project, and the New York Department of Transport designed this piloting technique. So this is New York, Manhattan, Broadway, and they closed it off between 42nd Street and 47th Street. They closed the street because previously this area had been dramatically affected by congestion and people with having issues with no cycling and injuries and many other problems. So they introduced really cheap, simple techniques through which they just closed off the street, and introduced this really simple garden furniture and the results are amazing. So you can see here, that was the previously and after, and then, so biking was decreased, everyone thought it was better, and even though they reduced the space on the the space on the streets, the journey times were improved for buses and taxis. So again, looking at the model, the problem was traffic and congestion. They researched the problem. The ideas was to make a pedestrian plaza, and they did this using very simple, cheap techniques, which is stopping traffic, introducing cheap outdoor furniture, which they then used an iterative design model. So this is our website. These were examples that we're sharing and trying to kind of understand how we in Glasgow can learn from other models in other cities, and not just looking at the process, but also looking at other design techniques. So, oh, sorry. This is now in Glasgow. This is where we are. So we're in Glasgow. We're a huge amount of space and a huge amount of creative activity, but what we lack is resource. And we're trying to share ideas about how to be the most efficient with the resources, or the limited resources that we have. And I hope that the website would become useful for anyone, and we would like to invite anyone who's interested in being involved in that. And that's the website address, and that's my contact details. Thank you very much.